So, Owen, thank you very much for being here with me.
De nada.
We are in the middle of the last module of the Advanced Master Practitioner.
Sure.
You're doing Carisma and storytelling. It's been very interesting. People are enjoying. And I would like to use this time that you are giving me, because I know that it's very late for both of us after the workshop, but I would like to talk a little bit more about Carisma, because a lot of people are interested in Carisma. What is Carisma about and how to create Carisma, etc., etc. So I would like to talk a little bit about that. And my first question for a lot of people that, well, they say, well, this person is charismatic, this other person is not charismatic, etc. How would you define what is a charismatic person?
Well, to me, charisma is about being yourself more and being more yourself. And what I mean by that is, it's about being more authentic and being able to express that authenticity to the world. So the most charismatic people are very much themselves. In other words, they're unique, they stand out, they let you see their personality. There's a real strong personality, and they do so by expressing that personality as fully as possible. A lot of people say, that person's charismatic, that person's not, and some people are just naturally charismatic, and that's very easy to say, but babies are all charismatic. Every toddler is charismatic and engaging. Dogs are engaging, there's certain qualities that make a dog or a baby interesting, and they captivate our attention, they grab our attention. So to me, when I look at that, I realize that, well, if we're all at that point in time engaging or interesting or charismatic, then what happens when we get older? Why do some people grow up and become less charismatic in time, and others grow up and are even more charismatic? And I think what happens is that there's a number of fears. So I don't think that charisma is something that some people have and others don't. I think the problem is that some people, their ability to be charismatic or engaging is stifled by the fears that they feel. So we're scared of being rejected. We're scared of embarrassing ourselves. We're scared of failing. We're scared of looking foolish to others and not being good enough. And those fears stop us from behaving the way we want to, and we start to behave like we think we should. So we start to adopt these conventions, these behavior, these mannerisms that let us fit in with the rest of society. And that's good because it allows us to get on well with people. But in turn, it stops our personality from coming to the fore. It stops us from being interesting and different. And so what's really important is to get to the point where you allow yourself to be you fully, authentically you. And that means you overcome the fears that hold us back. It means that you become comfortable with who you are, you build your self-esteem, you like who you are, and you express who you are to people. And then there's the expressivity piece, which is the external stuff, which is, well, when you speak, when you communicate who you really are, it's important that you do so in a full way, in an interesting way, in an entertaining way. That means in your body language, you're communicating a message. In your voice tone, you're communicating a message. And you need to build variety in that, and interest in that, and congruence, in other words, very strong feelings in that. Because when you want to communicate to another person, your body language, your tone of voice, your face, your words, all of them send different messages and create a certain impact in the audience. And if you want to be more expressive, if you want to be more engaging, you need to make sure that you're allowing your communication to do that. And that in turn will make you come across in more charismatic ways. So to me, everyone can learn to become more charismatic. Some people, might be naturally more charismatic than others, but the reality is we all are charismatic when we're, at a much younger age. To me, once you're able to be yourself, you can impact people more. And it doesn't matter if you're an introvert or an extrovert. We all have different ways of communicating, but the people that you want to listen to most, the people that are most entertaining, that we want to hear, that we want to be around, whether we like them or not, we can't keep our eyes off them. There's something that they're doing. And what they're doing is they're okay with themselves regardless of what you think of them. And when they express themselves to you, they do so in a very powerful, very full way. And that's what we try to get people to do, because in this world, if you want to stand out, if you want to be able to get people's attention, you need to know how to be charismatic. It's that simple.
Here we have a very famous theater artist, someone that also is a director of blah blah blah, and I heard him saying something once. He studied in a French school. He's Catalan, but he studied in a French school, so in France, and they had a poem that they had to read aloud in front of the whole class. And he was explaining that when it was his turn of reading it, he decided to read it with all his passion, with all his emotions involved in that poem. And when he finished, the teacher said, "What a bunch of bullshit and crap was that, what you did," and all the children began to burst laughing. And because there was a certain way to read it, and the proper way to read it. And that was a long time ago, that was 50, 60 years ago. But that thing made me think a lot about what you always talk about Carisma, because basically he somehow he overcame that thing. But a lot of people don't do that, and they just like switch off all the expressivity and charisma because someone else told that. I can recall in my brain when I was a child and someone was saying, "Well, you're doing silly things," or "Don't be a clown," and all these things that we do to the children, all these things that we tell them, "Don't be silly, don't be this, don't be that." To me, listening to you, I think, wow, what you are doing is basically killing their ability to be charismatic then.
Absolutely, and in many ways, that's one of the problems with society, is that we break people down over time because of what we expect they should be doing. Now, we've good intentions in doing so. The reason that they want the person to read it in a certain way, the reason that we want them to be able to do it is so that they can fit in, and so we can all go along and we can live in a nice conventional world where everything's predictable, where everything's safe, where everything's easy. Whenever someone does something a little bit different, goes against the grain, starts to express themselves a little bit too much, that can make people feel threatened. That can make people feel, "Oh, wait, well, what's going on?" It makes people feel uncertain, and a lot of people don't like that uncertainty. And that's understandable. But you have to understand the balance between the two. And so what's really important is that we allow children and we allow people to express themselves as fully as possible. That's why, to me, a lot of times people are like, "Well, I'm scientific, I'm not artistic." Or people talk about, "I'm artistic, I'm not scientific." But you can be both. Most of the greatest artists on planet Earth were also scientists. And what's really important is we allow ourselves the ability to express ourselves artistically, even if we're also scientifically exploring something. They're not mutually exclusive. You can be able to build a case where you are living your life in both ways. And to me, if you want to be more engaging, if you want to be more attractive to listen to, if you want to make more of an impact with your communication, being charismatic is where it's at. And that means letting other people see the real you, letting people see the weird you, letting people see the good parts of you, letting people see the bad parts of you, expressing your vulnerability, expressing your great points, expressing every aspect and every dynamic aspect of your character, letting people get to know you. Because after all, the people that know you the best are the ones that love you the most. And that's the key. The people that know you the best are the ones that love you the most. So if you can let more people in, you're not going to be everyone's cup of tea. But as long as you're okay with that, you're going to make more of a mark in this world.
One of the things that I heard you a long time ago that it created a big impression in my brain is a description that once you did about Carisma, and you said something similar, and excuse me my lack of precision because it was a long time ago, but it was something like, it's the skill or the ability to make feel people better when they are closer to you than they are far away from you. And that idea that when someone is charismatic, when this person, the other person is closer to you, that feels better, that feels good with you, then makes that person tend to be closer to you, and then that makes that person that wants like to be closer and to spend more time with you. And that's, I guess, is part of being charismatic. Maybe it's just a part, but it's an important part.
Sure, I mean, people will do more of what they feel good doing. So it's like a drug. If you take a drug and it makes you feel good, then you're more likely to do it. If you take something that makes you feel bad, you're less likely to do it. That's simple conditioning, Pavlov's conditioning, Pavlov's dog. What's important is that you can do this as a person. When you're trying to engage people, if you're the kind of person that is interesting, if you're the kind of person that makes them feel good and makes them feel excited or interested when they're around you, they'll want to be around you more. And a lot of people don't think like that. A lot of people are too busy thinking about the message they're trying to communicate. They're not asking themselves the question, how do I want the other person to feel when I communicate that message? To me, that's one of the biggest mistakes we make in business, is that we're so busy figuring out what's the message, what's the presentation, what's the PowerPoint slides, what are all the facts and figures I need to stuff this down this person's throat. Not thinking, how do I want that audience to feel when they leave here? How do I want that person to feel at the end of this? Even in dating. So many times when people are on dates, they're so busy trying to evaluate, do I like this person, do I not like this person, and how can I communicate and let them know how brilliant I am? Yeah, well, when I bought my first Ferrari, oh my God. So we're trying to tell them how brilliant we are, but that's not making them feel good. I don't know about you, but I've never sat and listened to someone boast about themselves for 2 fucking minutes and then gone, God, I feel great right now. You don't feel good when someone boasts. But you do feel good when they make you laugh. You do feel good when they say something nice. Sometimes you even feel good when they tease you or insult you. But it's about how you make the other person feel. And to me, charisma allows you to make people feel more intensely. And charisma is not always likable. Sometimes you can be charismatic and people fucking hate you for it. But it's about making them feel strongly when you're around. And the more that you can make a person feel strongly when you're around, the more they will remember you. The more they will want to be around you, the more they will either root for you to win or root for you to lose, but they'll still be rooting for you in some way. They'll still want to watch you in some way. And that's so important in this world where we're distracted by mobile phones and Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and email and texting and WhatsApp. All of these distractions on a regular basis are competing for attention. The importance of your ability to be able to grab that attention is so, so critical. And it needs to be something that you always keep at the forefront of your mind.
One of the things that when I train people in sales or even leadership, but especially in sales, is that it depends on the field. There are some fields that there are so many competitors that the clients see so many people that the biggest problem they have is that they are not memorable for the client. So it just comes once, and then comes another one, and then comes another one, and you don't remember the first one almost. So the way that the salespeople try to overcome that is trying to be so likable in terms that they also always almost go into submission to please so much the person, to make them feel that they can like that person, that they lose the whole point of that. And one of the things that I really like, and I heard today again, is that you don't have to be submissive. You don't have to go there and do whatever you think that is required to please a person, to be charismatic, therefore, and then to be memorable.
Absolutely. I mean, look, charisma is not always a positive thing. So Hitler was charismatic, you know? He was charismatic. He's not the most likable person in the world. The guy's an evil motherfucker. Sorry, he's an evil bastard. But he was charismatic. He was engaging. When you take, for example, a salesperson that's placating and is being too nice and all that sort of stuff, one of the things about that is that particular salesperson, they're losing their status the nicer they are. So if they're too nice, they lose the status, they lose the credibility. If you want to be persuasive, you need to have the credibility of knowing what you're talking about, being confident, and being likable. But if you're too likable, you're less confident. Now, if you're too confident, you're less likable. So you have to find that balance between the two, but there needs to be a balance. The second thing is, if more salespeople do that, is every salesperson is so busy being likable, then they are more forgettable because they're all being likable. Instead, what's more important is to think to yourself, what can I do that grabs their attention? What can I do that surprises them, that makes them interested? What story could I tell that instantly is different to any other story they would have heard? What is a different approach? Thinking outside the box, being creative with it, and figuring out a new way of being able to communicate a message to that person. And when you start thinking like that, when you start asking the question, what can I do different to everybody else, as opposed to how can I make them like me, then you're in a better position because now you're focused on what's most important of all, which is their attention. Once you have their attention, they're going to listen to you. And if they listen to your pitch, as opposed to all the other pitches that bored the hell out of them, then you're much more likely to be able to win them over and to be able to get them buying your product or doing what it is that you want them to do.
And it's something that happens with the salespeople, that happens with people that have to do speeches in front of other people, that you said again today, and I think it's very important that people are so focused selling in themselves, in the needs that they have, of selling and achieving and a goal and whatever, some numbers, that they, without noticing, they are focusing on themselves. They are not really focusing on the other person. Although it looks like they're trying to be likable, but they are completely focused on themselves. And when we talk about public speaking, it's very similar. What happens with a lot of people is that they are so focused in doing a good performance, they lost completely the real focus. And this is something that you were talking about. And I think it's really important to have the right focus when you are interacting with people.
Sure, absolutely. And here's the big problem. So when people are selling, they're thinking to themselves, okay, what script do I need to use? Or what style do I need to use? Or even what techniques do I need to use that persuades the other person? They're the wrong questions to ask. Your question should be, what does the other person want? What do they want to feel? What do they not want to feel? What's the most important thing for them? Because the more you ask the questions about what the other person wants, the easier it is for you to connect what they want to what you want, which is to get the sale. So before you think of any techniques or any NLP stuff or any of that sort of stuff, the first question in any sales context should be, what does the other person want? What's important to them? You're focusing on them, so then you can connect what they want with what you want. That's number one. When you're talking to an audience, your question needs to be not, what do they think about me? Because then that's about you. Even if you say, no, it's about their impression. No, it's about you. So what you instead need to ask is, what are you there to do? So what's your job? Your job is to help them. So what do you want the audience leaving with? What do they need to know? What do they need to feel? What do they need to believe? What do they need to do in order for their lives to be better? And that's what you need to be focused on when you're talking to an audience. So if you tune your attention and ask questions towards focusing on the audience or the customer or the client, and you're figuring out how can you help them, as opposed to what do you need to do to them to get the sale, or what do you need to do to them to make them like you or think you're a great presenter. If you start focusing on their needs, their goals, their desires, their wants, then you're in a position where you're going to impact them more. Because we don't care about another person necessarily that is in front of us. We care about what that other person can do for us. So if you want to talk to me, you talk to me about what I want. You don't talk to me about how great you are. You don't talk to me about how you're perfect at doing whatever it is. You talk to me about how you can help me get what I want, because that's where my focus is.
So that brings me to the point of the importance of states. I mean, you were talking today about states, and one of the things that I realize about people is that in general, all of us in different ways or different moments of our life, we tend to have kind of average states. I mean, not too strong, not too weak, not too this, not too, but then that state is again not memorable. And one of the things happens in sales, happens with public speaking, happens in leadership, is that you are close to some people that when you're close, you can feel it inside you that person has something special, has an energy. In the public speaking even more, you can feel that person has something like energy. A good example of that is Richard Bauer. Wow, you are in front of him, you are listening to him, and there is something there you can physically feel in your body. Could you explain a little bit more about that?
Well, I think there's a few things. With that, it's not just the state, it's also the energy. And let me explain the way I feel about both of those. So your state is the way in which you feel. And when you see Richard is, as you said, incredible. When you see Richard teach, he teaches with such certainty, he teaches with such passion, he teaches with playfulness, he teaches completely in the moment. So he personifies the real states of charisma very powerfully. When he's in front of an audience, you can feel what he feels. And states are contagious. So when you've got someone who's very fully feeling a state, you'll start to feel that too, and that's one of the reasons. But Richard and many people also have an energy. It's an energy that they have which comes from their overall beliefs about themselves. So Richard's beliefs about the world, his beliefs about himself, his beliefs about people, all of those beliefs are so strong and so powerful and so empowering for him that there's a real solid sort of sense of security. When you look at him, you know there's a person that feels very secure about themselves, very confident, they know what they're talking about. And so there's all of those. So the beliefs or the feelings or the identity that the person has is so effective and so strong that there's this sort of an energy that comes from that. And that energy is how they communicate to the audience. It's almost like they can impact you just with their energy field. Now, I'm not talking about like magical throwing energy dust and stuff. I'm talking about when they speak with such a complete set of conviction in what they're saying that you are just affected or impacted by it. When we talk about Steve Jobs, when he was talking about Apple, they used to talk about the fact that he had what they call a reality distortion field. And in many ways, when a person is that convinced about something, they're so convinced that when they communicate with you, you start to become convinced too. Because again, conviction like that creates a sudden energy that impacts the people around you. And I think that if you get your head right, if you get your attitude right, if you ask yourself the right questions, if you think in more healthy, more useful ways about the people around you, then you'll start to emanate that energy. It's like when you meet a person for the first time, I always say, ask yourself, what do you like about them? It's because when you're asking yourself that question, it affects your brain, it affects your state, and it affects the energy you give out. And therefore, you're much more likely to create rapport and be likable to that person by you focusing on what you like about them. This is how energy works. So if you want to change the energy that you give out, you need to change how you communicate on the way in.
And that brings me to the point that you're talking about conviction. And someone could say, okay, then if I have to be really believing in what I'm saying and what I'm thinking about with everything, then I shouldn't listen too much what the other person says, because I'm so convinced that I just have to explain my point. But what you say, and you said it today, it's just the opposite. I mean, you have to be flexible enough to adapt to the situation, and I guess that you have to be flexible enough to adapt also to the belief system of the other person. So it seems that it could seem for some people contradictory, that the fact that you have to build a strong belief system, conviction, but at the same time you have to be flexible interacting with other people.
Well, here's the thing, it is paradoxical, because as you said, sometimes when you're convinced, the problem is that you become too convinced, you limit yourself, and therefore you don't hear other people and you don't let other people in. A true great communicator is someone who listens to the other person, takes on board what the other person says, respects the other person's beliefs, and knows, ultimately speaking, that you're never 100% sure of anything. That you always have to be dynamic and flexible in your beliefs and all that sort of stuff. But also knows that if they want to persuade someone or influence someone in certain ways, they can't get by with being uncertain. The most important thing, or one of the most important aspects of persuasion, is when you say something is true, you need to be convinced it's true. And you need to communicate that congruently, so your body, your brain, your face, your voice, your words all say, this is definitely true. So you need to convince yourself of that while you're communicating it. But just because you're convinced, you need to have the dexterity or the flexibility to be able to then challenge or question yourself at another occasion and in another appropriate moment. If you're too convinced, you miss everything out, you dismiss and you don't hear whatever's coming in. But if you're not convinced enough, then you're never fully going to impact people, because if you're not convinced, they ain't going to be convinced. So the process of being able to convince yourself and to be able to challenge your own beliefs are two skills that you need to have if you want to be very effective at being able to help impact people. But you need to be able to go between those two on a regular basis quickly. What most people do is they have one or the other. They're continuously very rational, very reasonable, always looking at different sides, but when they communicate, you don't really believe them because they don't really believe them. Whenever you have other people, they're convinced about everything, certain, they say it with positivity, and they're quite charismatic because they do so, but they're not very good listeners, so therefore they make a lot of mistakes. And that's also a problem. So you've got to have both skills, and you've got to be able to use both skills on a regular basis if you truly want to make an impact.
So just to finish with this interview, I will be talking with you for ages, but we'll make it short. We'll keep it short. How do metaphors fit in all this charisma thing? How do they fit? What is the importance of metaphors? Stories.
Okay, so story. So basically, to me, a story is one of the most, if not the most powerful communication tools we have at our disposal. Most of the time when we try to persuade people by logic. So we say the reason why this is true is because X, because of Y and Z, right? So X is true because of Y and Z. We give reasons, we give evidence. That's how we're trained from birth. We know logic, we know deductive logic, we know inductive logic, we know how to do it. And the problem with that is that we all know how to do it, but it doesn't always work that well. Now, what does work a lot of times is impacting people emotionally, convincing people because they like you, convincing people because they feel like they want to, convincing people because of the way you make them feel about the idea. And that works all the times. But again, you need to be able to do both, and storytelling enables you to impact people and influence people logically and emotionally. So you're able to do both. So storytellings are something we're biologically programmed to believe. Since we were, evolving as cavemen and cavewomen, we were telling stories to each other. Before a written word, we were telling stories to each other. So stories are a number of events, a sequence of events where something happens. And what's really important is that we learn from stories. Since we're babies, we learn, we grow up. And as adults, they can be the most important, most powerful ways of communicating information. So much so that in Harvard Business School, they primarily teach through case studies method of teaching, and case studies are stories. But they're wonderful stories because they allow you to use logic and give actual statistics and facts, but at the same time, bring people through a journey which impacts them emotionally. Now, where charisma comes in is that charisma is about being more engaging, and if you tell stories, that's one of the most engaging and charismatic things you can do, because when you tell a story, people want to listen to you. When you tell a story, you make people feel a certain way, and based on the definition we talked about earlier, if you make a person feel like they want to be around you more, that's being charismatic, and stories enable you to be more charismatic. So stories allow you to be more charismatic, but also the more charismatic you are, the better the storyteller. Because the more you can express yourself, the more you use your body language, your voice and face and words, all in a certain way that's very powerful, the more likely people are to listen to your stories, and the more impact and emotionally you'll be able to have through the use of stories. So to me, charisma and storytelling fit in perfectly. And I'm very passionate, as you can probably tell, about stories.
Yes, I can tell. And I was thinking that, again, one of the best examples probably is Richard Bandler telling stories. It's you're sure. Just deep there, and you can basically, you can't escape from the whole world that he creates with the story. So it's so powerful.
The guy's a genius, and he's I think he's probably the best storyteller.
Yeah, I agree. So, Owen, thank you very much. I just would like to say to all the people that are watching this video that you have a wonderful YouTube channel.
That's right.
Full of videos, amazing videos.
Thank you. Yeah, I've got a YouTube channel with lots of videos. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. So like my page, Owen Fitzpatrick International on Facebook, and Twitter, Owen Fitzp, and YouTube, Instagram as well, and YouTube, of course. Subscribe to the channel. And even if you don't speak English, still watch the videos, like them. Why not?
Exactly. And I can tell that the videos are amazing, are hilarious.
Thank you.
You have a great sense of humor, and if you understand English, you will enjoy it. If you don't understand, just seeing him eating grass from a field or any other crazy ideas. But that's the point for me. It's unique. The way you do it, it's completely different, and that makes a whole difference. And you can tell by watching your videos that you are different and you are walking your talk. For me it's important because it's again about congruence. So thank you very much, Owen. It's a pleasure to have you here in Barcelona.
Thank you.
Thank you for this little talk.
Thank you.
And well, let's keep being charismatic then.
I hope so. Thanks a lot, mate.
Thank you.
Cheers. Muchas gracias.
De nada.